Today on the Relationship Renovation Podcast, we answer a listener's email. We talk about it just in general, why emotional affairs happen.
The partnership itself does not have healthy communication skills. Maybe one partner or both are feeling unseen, unheard. So then they find this other person that's giving them attention.
How to define them, and we take a deep dive into boundaries, making sure that you have an understanding of like, hey, if you did this, you would be crossing a boundary. That would not be okay with me. So stay tuned. I know you're going to get a lot out of this episode.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation Podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin, and we are excited to be back here again this week. And I have like a personal success or a relationship success for us. And it relates a few episodes ago. We talked about like, how you sort of come back from arguments with your partner, especially like ones that feel like there's a
destabilizing.
They're more destabilizing. And one of my things that I talked about is that like sometimes I have like a hangover from those moments, and it takes me a long time to come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so Tara's given me permission, right? I have permission
To share.
You
do.
Okay. Because that's something we always talk about, not just obviously in the context of our relationship or our podcast, but in the context of like when we're at a party, where we're with friends, that if we're going to share something about our relationship, that we always get permission to do it.
We always check in with our partner. Is that okay? It's just a respectful behavior to do. And
absolutely. So Tara's given me permission.
I have.
We had like a little bit of it wasn't like an argument, but it ended up in like a big fracture moment. It was after we'd had like a kind of a busy day. We'd had a staff meeting. Something had happened that kind of hurt my feelings. I wanted to tell Tara about it. Everybody had gone. We tried to do it. It didn't go well. It went pretty bad. And and Tara kind of drove off at a fast pace out of the parking lot.
I know, I'm such a dork.
We had to like go home because we had to like, I was picking up one kid, she was picking up another kid. So we had to like go home for a very uncomfortable moment in our front yard in the driveway. But we were both like, I was up in my story. I was like, I can't believe it. All I wanted to do was just like share something, and then it blew up in my face. And you had your own story, I'm sure. What was your story?
I felt like the presentation felt not soft and kind. And so I felt like a little emotionally unsafe. Yeah.
So we both were up in our story, interestingly enough, about the other person. I wasn't thinking of what I could have done better. Doesn't sound like Tara was thinking about what she was trying, what she could have done better.
No, dude, it was all your fault.
Yes. And so, but it was like, it felt powerful. It felt like a strong storm.
I literally had to drive around after taking our daughter to gymnastics, and I cried like in my car for an hour, just feeling powerless. Yeah. I mean, it still happens. We have all these tools. We have all this insight. We do a ton of personal and couples work therapeutically, and it still happens.
Yeah.
Which is totally okay because we always come back to each other. It took like a couple hours, and then you sent me a text with a little smiley face. Sorry, I'm just like interrupting your process.
No, it's all right. No. I mean, and that was sort of my point in wanting to share this today, was that we didn't sweep it under the rug. Like we didn't act like it didn't happen, but we also were like, I think both of us were like, I'm gonna let this go. Like, I remember in the car, like, I was up in my head circulating, like, I can't believe it, up in my, like, story. Yeah. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I love her. And we're both sort of stressed. We got a lot going on. And that didn't go well. But I'm letting this go. I'm not going to hold this against her. I'm not going to come back and reignite this. And that was my message to you. I first did it through text, but then I also did it when you got home as well. It was just like, I'm letting go of this thing. I know we're working on it, but I was able to also not like come back in a distant way.
And I feel like kind of synopsis of the story is that when you're doing the work, when you're having compassion and understanding for your partner, although things will still happen, conflicts will arise, moments of destabilization will occur, but you repair it and you come back more quickly, or you come back at all. And couples who don't have those skills to understand what to do, they don't come back. It just builds another fractured moment, and it's painful, and they stay in their suffering. So, yeah.
And I think we were in the middle of a tough week. It was like Wednesday, and it could have just like spiraled us into an even worse week.
Oh my! I just wanted to go stay at a hotel. I was like, I want to go and stay at a hotel.
But
Not
instead,
even be around you.
What it did, I think, was like, the week hasn't been perfect or anything, but almost getting through that moment stabilized us a little bit and maybe gave us confidence, and maybe the other person a little bit, because I was really like thankful that you were able to let it go, and you weren't, that like there wasn't this like feeling of like palpable like resentment.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So our relationship success, we have
Yeah.
our couples every week. They come in, they have to share their feelings, successes within their relationship, challenges in their relationship. And it's just a really good way to kind of continue with like your vision for your relationship. Like, are we on the same page? Checking in around successes and challenges is really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so today,
let's jump in. This is we're going to answer another listener email today, and I think it's an important subject. It's a very common subject, and we want to get at it right away.
And the topic is about emotional affairs and how to navigate emotional affairs in relationships.
And so I think what we'll do is we'll talk directly to this listener, but we'll also talk in sort of a general sense of what we've learned about emotional affairs. And so it's useful both to this one person, but hopefully to a lot of people.
I'm going to try to read this little small text without my readers.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. And listener, thank you so much for writing to us and for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts. Okay. Hello. I recently started listening to your podcast and absolutely love it. I wanted to write in and hope that you would do an episode on this topic. Between October 2022 and June 2023, my husband had an emotional affair with a female coworker. It ended with her treating him like trash and telling him he needed to figure his shit out and get over her, and that she was over him. Mind you, this whole time we were still together. I not once kicked him out. I kept begging him to stop talking to her socially inappropriately. And he continued until she again set boundaries. At some point, they started being friends again. They had a falling out a couple of months ago, went a whole month without talking, and then she confronted him. They talked about things and they started being friends again. Well, recently she texted him yet again, and she has feelings for him again. And he did tell her, listen, those feelings are gone for me. They've been gone for a while now. Anyway, she then started calling into work, and he reached out, and she said she called the crisis line and requested to see him. I only found this out after he came home after lying to me. He told me he was somewhere else when he was really talking to her in her apartment because she lives in a complex behind work. He then says he wants to continue seeing our couples therapist. We had been discussing prior about waiting longer than the month between sessions we've been doing. He is also still adamant that he stays friends with her. Do you have any advice? I'm always feeling second to her, and clearly this past week with him lying about seeing her at her apartment doesn't help. Thank you, your loyal new listener. That's big. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean...
and not in a judgmental way. I'm just saying that's...
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumps out at me is just like clarifying is one of the hardest things I think about emotional affairs is that there's sort of a real murky ambivalence about like, okay, what is this? Whereas like when someone has a physical affair, when they go out and they have sex with somebody else, they kiss somebody else, there's some sort of physical moment that changes what the relationship is, it's so very clear.
A physical boundary has been crossed.
Yeah, it's been crossed. There's no gray zone here. You know exactly what you're dealing with. With emotional affairs, it's so much more like, is this appropriate? Is this not appropriate? It's easy for a lot of misleading. It's easy for there to be a lot of manipulation. There's easy for there to be a lot of just like confusion.
Well, and I think it doesn't start off like, I'm going to have an emotional affair with this person. It starts off fairly innocent and just connecting. And then, right, over time, it develops into something deeper for many reasons that we could have like 10 podcasts on.
Yeah. Well, and because of the lack of clear like understanding of like what's the difference between just being friends with somebody at work and when does it become an emotional affair, that's why the act of creating boundaries is incredibly important once you identify something is going on here, or best case scenario, early in your relationship before you've dealt with any of this, making sure that you have an understanding of like, hey, if you did this, you would be crossing a boundary.
Right.
That would not be okay with me. And we would have to look at like, what's the consequences of that?
Well, I think because let's start off with like, what is an emotional affair? Let's like define it, because a lot of couples don't have boundaries around this because they just think this would never happen because they're with their person. And there's friendships out there before we even meet each other. So I'm sure we all have different, definitions, but I define an emotional affair as if you're sharing something intimate about yourself, whether that's emotional, whether that's about your personal relationship with your partner, to somebody else and your partner doesn't know. To me, that's a boundary that's being crossed that isn't appropriate because you're sharing something without your other person knowing what you're sharing.
Yeah.
That's like what, for me. How about for you?
A lot of it does, like, for me, come down to like establishing the boundaries of what's okay and what's not okay. Because in one relationship, there could be somebody who's like, hey, yeah, you can have a friendship with somebody else at work where you talk about personal stuff, and that is absolutely okay with me. But my line in the sand is if you go to that person to talk about something you're struggling with and you don't go to me, that it's hard to just say, hey, this is what an emotional affair is, this is what it isn't is. It's really about the comfort level and the boundaries that the couple has established together. Clearly in this situation, the partner, the gentleman, he'd crossed boundaries. Like, she had asked him, please don't be friends with this person. Please don't be talking to this person. She was attempting to lay down boundaries, and he was unwilling. The other thing about an emotional affair.
But also, really quickly, what were the consequences if he did cross the boundaries? Because it didn't sound like I didn't hear in the email that if he doesn't do this, I will leave, right? So what were the consequences? And if there's not consequences, you're going to keep crossing boundaries. It's like children do, right? Oh, there's no, they say that this is a boundary, but we're just going to keep crossing it because there's no consequences to it.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's hard. Like, you got to my heart goes out to somebody who's in this situation because, I don't know if they have children, but they certainly, they live together. Their finances are blended.
Yeah.
They have a long history together, probably. That's not the easiest thing in the world to have like that boundary. But Tara's right. I mean, if I ask Tarah like, hey, please stop doing this, and then she continues to do it, and I'm not able to say like, okay, like if you do this, then this will happen, cause and effect. It's going to be much easier for her to plow right through my boundaries.
And a lot of times emotional affairs happen because maybe the partnership itself does not have healthy communication skills, right? Maybe one partner or both are feeling unseen, unheard. So then they find this other person that's giving them attention, And then they start to confide in them about their relationship issues. That's right there. That's when the boundary is crossed, because now you're sharing your personal, intimate details to another person because this person's giving you attention. And then, right, that kind of goes into the cycle of emotional affairs.
Yeah. Well, and just this is a plug. We have an upcoming episode where we're interviewing Dr. Stan Tacken. He's been on our podcast a few times, just a real sort of leader in our field. He defines this as thirds, that you and your partner are the primary, whether it's the kids, whether it's another person, whether it's another family member, that there cannot be a third that gets between or raises above the importance of your relationship. And so we're going to talk a lot more about that with him, but that's exactly what I'm seeing here, is that this other woman became a third that then that was taking priority over her.
Well, it ruptured the couple bubble. So I kind of describe it to couples like the idea of thirds or something else interfering between that primary bond. It's like the couples in their little couple bubble, and they have this like little safe surrounding, and it feels really good. And you can see people from the outside. Those are our kids. Those are our coworkers. Those are our friends. Those are our parents. But there's this safety seal around the couple bubble, hence healthy boundaries, right? And the idea of thirds is like that someone can totally pop that seal or just jump right in there. And now there's like 3 in the couple bubble, but we don't want 3 in the couple bubble, right? And so the idea is like, what do we need to do to maintain this healthy bond in our little couple bubble? Put up a great seal, again, boundaries. And then, right, everybody else is on the outside that we care about, that we love, but they are not interfering in our bubble.
Yeah. I mean, and that would be if I was just going to get like super direct with this couple and be like, hey, this is what you guys need to take a step forward and do, is if you have this counselor, because I think you guys definitely need some support in doing it, because not just in like navigating like conflict, but also like there's probably a lack of awareness that both of you have around like why the woman who wrote the letter is allowing those boundaries to just be crossed over and over and over, why the gentleman who's having the emotional affair struggles to lay down boundaries, why he's having a hard time like finding what's appropriate. Like, this is bigger stuff that doesn't even like really involve each other and areas for personal growth. And so my biggest piece of advice is, if you got that counselor, get in there and say, hey, we need to establish some boundaries so we know we can like stabilize here.
To me, it feels like, yes, first of all, there's an agreement. The agreement being, for the next however long, we are going to agree to work on us, our relationship. We're going to work on boundaries. We're going to work on understanding what was happening, right? What was that emotional affair meeting that in this relationship couldn't? But there's got to be agreement around no contact with this person while they're working on it, because this contact, this idea of a third, you cannot do that work when that insecurity, that threat is there. So there's got to be, and I'm not saying an agreement forever, but while you're working on and healing and trying to make boundaries, that's going to be really helpful. Example, so couples will come in and, right, there's infidelity, there's emotional affairs, there's many different things. And I say, listen, you guys are going to be here for however long. And in order to really focus on you, to have more clarity, to understand what's happening, what are the agreements that you're both needing? And both couples, right, both partners identify what they are. Sometimes they're on the same page, sometimes they're not, but we work it and work it and work it until it's collaborative and everybody has agreed upon this while we're working on our relationship. Because now we can see, hey, are the needs of this emotional affair, can I actually get these needs met from my partner? You're not going to even have a chance if you don't make that agreement first.
Well, and that is like, that nails it, is like that you guys have to like sort of huddle back together and say like, hey, we are working on us, period. Here are the boundaries that we're agreeing on to figure out whether we can make it work. And then that pushes that other person out of your
Yeah.
bubble, because that other person, they're just another human being with their own emotional process, trying to get their own needs met. And, they're just a human out there. And it's healthy for that person too, that the two of you determine what your boundaries are and hold
Yeah.
it up, because then that other person has to go out and find a person who's available, a person who can, whether it's a friend or a partner or whatever it is that they're looking for, that they're getting their needs met from somebody who's never going to meet their needs, in the way they need it. Like, getting into a relationship with somebody who's already connected to somebody else is a bad beginning. That's
Yeah.
pretty consistent.
And just to kind of provide this compassion that people who have emotional physical affairs are not bad people. It comes from attachment issues. It comes from abandonment issues. It comes from not growing up in households where boundaries were even there, or really poor boundaries, or childhood and or adulthood trauma. Like, there are so many reasons why emotional physical affairs happen. It's not that this person's a bad person and they don't love the other person. It's that they don't have the skills, the insight, to know what a healthy boundary is. With abandonment issues, I can speak for this myself. If I was in a long-term relationship, 5 years, 5 years, it's like, oh, you're like the French fry in the car, the old French fry. You're like, yeah, it's just there. I'm just going to leave it there. Anybody that would even give me any attention, I was like, ooh, like that feels really good, because like that's how I survived from attention from other people, because I didn't know that I had such significant abandonment issues from both of my dads leaving me. And so I had to work on that. I had to understand that. But if I didn't, I would continue. Anyone who's going to give me any attention after my relationship has kind of become more monotonous, or I don't want to say bland, but I'm guilty of having significant emotional affairs in my past because of my own abandonment issues. But I didn't know. I just thought, oh, this person stopped loving me as much, and now this person really wants to love me more. Again, it's a individual process, but it's a couple's process too when you're in it and now it's happening. And I that's what we have to help people identify. Like, people don't usually know how to say what they're needing in relationships that are hearable. I need more attention. We need to have more quality time together. I need us to have more physical intimacy. I need us to have more appreciations. Like, we don't say those things.
I mean, I think
we expect them.
That's a great point of growth for the guy who's having the emotional affair, is not looking at it of, oh, what is my current partner not giving me, but man, why might I be doing this? Instead of the person I'm hooked up with, that I'm linked with, instead of working on that relationship and figuring out why I'm having a hard time, instead of blaming them or saying like, I'm just not happy in this relationship, is looking at like, wow, like, why is it that now I look outside instead of working internally?
And it's important work to do, because this process repeats itself no matter who you're with. Like, if I didn't start working on my own abandonment issues, there is no way we would be together right now. Because like, when things would have gotten more, what's the word? Habituated.
Bland.
I would have looked for that next person giving me my oomph, right? And I would be doing that my whole life. I'd be like, people used to call me a serial monogamist. I was. And so it's really important work to do, so you can feel joyful and fulfilled in your relationship, and you don't need anything externally to give you that love, to give you that self-esteem, to give you that confidence. We get it from the person that we chose, but we have to tell each other how to do it.
I mean, so I think like circling it all back is, first of all, saying like, okay, to the listener and her partner, common thing. We hear about emotional affairs all the time. So it's just data, right? It's information. It's that we don't we don't have really good boundaries in our relationship. We haven't talked about where the boundaries are. It's that there's some aspects of our relationship probably where we're not entirely connected.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we probably struggle to identify our own personal needs and communicate it to each other in ways that are hearable so our partner can become more attuned to one another. That there's a lot going on there. But if both people are willing, that if you guys can look at each other, in the next week or two or whenever and say like, hey, we're going to work on this. This has reached a place where it's out of control. It's spun out of control. We have a therapist. We have some way we're going to approach this. We're going to look at this as an individual way to grow and a way to really solidify and have a really securely attached relationship.
And doing that work creates freedom. Again, we don't have that crystal ball to be like, oh, if you guys do all of this work, you're going to stay together. You're going to be great. It's going to give you clarity, though, around what it could be or maybe, what it might not be able to be. But you move on in a way that feels good for you because you're working on becoming your best self within this relationship, whatever that means.
Well, we as always, we want to thank that listener for being brave enough to share your story. Certainly is going to be something that a ton of people are going to be able to identify with, are going to be able to learn from. So thank you for taking that step and sharing your story.
And if you are a listener out there that has healed through emotional affairs, have any feedback, right? Suggestions, recommendations, let us know. We'll always share it with our audience. We're always learning from each other. That is the community we're trying to create, relationship wellness across the globe, because it helps everything.
Absolutely. So please, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, tell somebody about the podcast. It really helps us get the word out and help people have the wonderful relationships that they deserve, but don't always know how to get.
And keep sending the emails. We love responding to these emails. So thank you. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.